I'm Seth Turner. I'm with Turner Septic Inspections. I'm licensed in New Hampshire and Maine. So, what we're going to do is go over a typical septic inspection. What we have on this one is a bit of a problem right off. And I've seen this less than 10 times, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of these. This tank is tipped a little bit towards the house. Somebody messed up on installation a little. It should be level. Again, I barely see this. So this is uncommon. I knew it when we opened the lid here. You see this pipe? That pipe should be a few inches above the water level. Okay? So how this works...
A few inches above it.
Above it, yeah. So I'm going to describe everything about the tank, and then we're going to go talk about the distribution box, and then we'll talk about the field, okay? This water level is probably going to rise a little bit because we're about to run a bit of water. We're kind of simulating the house waking up in the morning, everybody getting up, doing their morning ablutions, taking eating breakfast, all that fun stuff. So that's what we're simulating right now. So, how a septic tank works. Some people, when I open these up, they look and they go, oh my God, it's full. You know, I have a problem. That's not true. This is how it operates. This is operating level. There's only 2 pipes coming into this, going in and out of this tank. This is one, it's coming in. You can start to see our flow coming in. And this is the only one that leaves. So it's not like there's a pipe at the top and one at the bottom. If there was, there wouldn't be anything in here and we would indeed have a problem. That's not how it works. This works at operating level. Now in a normal tank, that pipe would be about 3 to 4 inches above the water because this pipe is setting the level of the tank. The water sits right on the cusp right here, and you add a gallon goes out. You add 10 gallons, 10 gallons goes out, right? No moving parts. So normally that's more of a waterfall, and now it's more like a lazy river, but that's supposed to be dropping in and then it's flowing out of here.
Is this 2 tanks here?
This is 1 tank, 2 openings. It's a 1250, 1,250. It's a 3-bedroom home, so this is actually overkill. You could have put a 1,000-gallon tank on here, but it's good that you have it in here. It's kind of like buying a Jeep that already has the big tires on. It's just a little more built, it's a little more set up for stuff. There's going to be a few car analogies. They're fun. So, because nobody understands septic, but everybody knows what a car is. So, well, we'll go with one right now. So a basic thing to say here is, that's the engine of your car, this leach field. This is your oil filter. You can't do much about the engine. I can't go home on the weekend and whip the engine apart in my truck. I don't know how to do it. But I can change the oil. And if you change the oil, it'll take care of it. Same thread. If you change the oil and you go to the dealer and he says, hey, change this every 6,000 miles, you know, you should probably listen to the guy. But if you say, hey, I don't believe you, I'm going to change it every 50,000, it's your choice. You know, if you want to pump this every 10, 15 years, it's your choice. But the state's going to recommend you pump it every 2 years. And that's, if it's everything set up in code, which this one is, it's actually a little above code for the house, and you're living here every day, all the time, with people in every bedroom, then that's 2 years as your usual pump. If you say this was a vacation home, we only come up on weekends, we'll move that to 3 or 4 years maybe, because you're not using as much, right? But if you want to like short-term rent it, and you've got 10 people showing up, then 2, then 4, then none, then 6, you might want to do it every year. It's not that it can't handle it, it's that we have a bunch of organisms out here, bacteria and such, that are doing our work and eating our stuff for us. They'll get used to like what you two are using, and they'll self-regulate, they'll self-populate how many they need to take care of your needs. But when there's 8 people showing up, they're like, oh my God, there's a bunch of people here, there's stuff, there's food, we need to make babies, we need to eat this. So then by the time they make all the babies, it doesn't happen overnight, it takes a few days, all of a sudden the 8 people leave. And then there's like nobody here, or 2 people check in. And then you're like, oh, well now we got way too many people, we gotta let a bunch of guys die off because we don't have enough food to feed you. So it's not that it's not meant for it, it just means it goes through all these fluctuations and it's really behind a couple steps the whole time. When you have 8, they have to repopulate. By the time they do, there's nobody, then they depopulate, then there's more people. So that's why I recommend once a year. Better, it's just safer. Plus, if you're short-term renting, you're making money. So don't be a cheapskate pumping our tank. You know? It's not that hard. It's just like, again, just like the oil. You know, if you want to say, I'm not going to change oil for till 30,000 miles, it's up to you. You know, you can wait 10 years. But if you have a problem, it's probably what the problem's going to be. What do you got?
On the flip side, if you have a 3-bedroom home, but you only have 2 people living there.
Yeah. So stretch it out a little bit, maybe to 3 years, but I wouldn't go too much further. I mean, it's going to run you around $350 to pump the tank, and it's really in your own best interest, just like changing your oil. I mean, if you want to stretch your car out and not change as much, it's fine. But, you know, you might be taking off some time off the end of its life. But then again, if you're eating Taco Bell every night, or you're sending bad stuff down here like flushing wipes, then it doesn't matter how often you're pumping because you're hurting the thing, you know, with that. So it's really how you treat it. You know, I mean, especially like a fun one for me is always cancer medications. Sometimes I can open a tank and I know somebody's on cancer medication because it eats the concrete.
When you pump this from either one of those?
No, you want to pump from here. Because all of the solids are coming on this side. So they're all really accumulating here and then more or less sliding down to that side, right? Because there's nothing turning this up. So, the problem with this tank is we have a small tilt. Usually this would be a little higher, that pipe would be above the water level. Other than that, this is what we're looking at. This is what we want to see, okay? There's nothing wrong with the baffles. Now we're going to talk about how the tank works, okay? So, septic tank starts right here. It goes to just beyond that hole, right? So basically the two holes. What this is a settling tank. So what we're trying to do is we're sending all our stuff in here from the house, and it needs time to settle. The size of the tank matters because say you had a 50-gallon drum and you had 10 bedrooms. The thing would never get a chance to settle. It would never, because we want to get our scum on the top, our solids on the bottom, and that effluent, which is a nice way of saying poop water or whatever you want to call it, is what we're trying to get out there. We're keeping all the bad stuff in here like an oil filter, and then when you clean it, you suck all the bad stuff out and start over again because you can't unscrew this and throw it away and screw another one on. So, what's happening in here is we have two baffles. This is a baffle, this is called a full baffle. It's going all the way across the tank. It's going halfway down the depth of the tank, okay? And it sticks up out of the water. In this case, it should be sticking up a few more inches because the tank is tilted, okay? What that's doing is we got a bunch of yahoos using the water slide over here, right? We don't want them messing up all the people who are floating in the middle and trying to relax because that's where we're trying to do our separating. We're trying to let the scum take its time to float and the solids take its time to get to the bottom. So we don't want to disrupt that. So if we had a 50-gallon drum and 10 bedrooms, constantly churned up, meaning that we're sending churned up water out there, meaning chunks are going out to our field and we're hurting it. Okay? The field's like a coffee filter. You want to just send it clean water. The cleaner the better, the longer it'll last, really. So that's a resting movement. Everything comes in, boom, hits that and has to stop. Then it all goes under the baffle to enter the main part of the tank. And now it's moving nice and slow, so we're not churning everything up that's in the middle, right? Usually when it goes under the baffle, it's slowing off any solids at that point. Now what's happening, we're going to kind of go into a few things here at the same time. Garbage disposals are terrible on a septic system that you have at your house. They're fine if you're on municipal because they can deal with it. They have dry pools where they let everything dry out, they scrape up all the bad stuff and get rid of it. You don't have that, you have this. So when you use a garbage disposal, you're taking the chunks of food and you're chopping it all into pieces. So food, for this instance, what we're going to go with is there's dense particles that are going to sink, and there's buoyant particles that are going to float. And there's neutral particles that just stay in the middle. We don't like anything neutral. We don't like wipes, we don't like paper towels, we don't like neutral particles. So we like everything to group together and get in clumps that has some dense, some buoyant, and some neutral in it. Now if it's predominantly buoyant, it's going to float up and become scum. If it's predominantly dense, it's going to sink to the bottom and become a solid. Everything else is going to sit in the middle. Okay? Follow me so far? So hits here, goes under the baffle. A lot of the solids at that point say, well, we're not going up there, we're too heavy, we're staying down here. So it stays on the bottom of the tank. Again, that's a slope. So then our scum starts to rise up. Now this takes time. That's going back to the 50-gallon drum. If you had a 1-bedroom house though on a 5,000-gallon tank, it would be silly. You'd have this little trickle coming in over here and there'd barely be any solids in it. So that's why size matters according to house. There's a lot of times I go to inspections on an older house, and maybe it's got a 1,000-gallon tank and it's on a 4-bedroom because it was built prior to say 2002 when we changed a lot of the laws, or it could have been even earlier when they changed the laws, and that's what's called grandfathered. It's still okay for the house even though it's not to today's code, but it was put in a code. The code was just different at that point. What that would mean if that ever fails, the field is what really fails, then you would have to bring everything up to code. But until anything fails, you're allowed to use it as much as you want. Okay, everybody follow that? So, if it was a tiny tank, it wouldn't work. If it was too big, it's kind of silly, so size matters. This is a little bigger than you need, so good, it's like you bought the bigger tires on the car. Okay, so now we're in the middle of the tank, we're all settled, we're all separated. So the garbage disposal obviously chops everything up and makes everybody separate. We don't like that. That's basically why we don't like garbage disposals. So, in the middle now, we got our scum floating on top, which they have none in here because they pumped it a few months ago, and the solids on the bottom, which there aren't one of those either. But, now we come to the outlet baffle. This is the important part. This one's made of PVC. That won't fall off, that's good. That's how they do them all nowadays. You really don't even get the full baffles anymore. They just chuck a couple pieces of PVC in the tank now, and your plumber puts everything together. Because the PVC doesn't rot off. Whenever the concrete falls off, because they will rot off, I jackhammer what's left, and I put a PVC one on for people that have broken baffles. Because the PVC will never rot.
That's just a T there?
No, well, it's a T with a piece that's going halfway down the tank, attached to the bottom. So it's probably about 1.5 foot piece going down, acting like a straw, because we don't want to drink from the solids, the scum. Now, what this is doing is more important than this one, because this is kind of just stopping movement. This one, now that the scum layer is floating on top, and we talked about how this pipe is setting the level of the tank, right? Well, the scum is on top. It's like a whitewater raft just sitting on top of the water, waiting to go hit the rapids. And if that's usually sitting right here on the cusp, if this wasn't here, acting as a dam, all of the scum would be like the raft and be like, all right, we're heading down the tunnel of love, here we go, and it would head right down. And that would be bad. That'd be like...
Is that the way the old systems are? Like my old
That's the way every system pretty much is.
I mean, I have a one-tank system.
It's even old concrete, half moons, depending on how old it is.
I think it's concrete is what I'm really seeing.
Then it probably has what we call it on the end of the concrete ones. They don't do a full baffle, because the full baffle is so that they can enter the tank from either side, so they're universal, but you can only leave a tank lengthwise. So this is what we would call a box baffle, and it would probably come out like this, and the pipe would leave that way. This one's leaving kind of at an angle. It's a little fishy, but it works. So this is keeping all that scum that usually is floating here, you don't have any, from just walking down this pipe. Because that would be a lot like pouring molasses onto the coffee filter right here. We plug it all up.
Excuse me, Seth.
Yeah.
Should we leave the water on in
Oh
there?
yeah, we
Leave it
still
on?
got 12 more minutes.
Okay.
So you're starting to come over there, starting to back up a little bit. And you have a bit of a sag over here, which is probably causing part of that, but we're going to get to that. So that's basically the septic tank. Do we have any questions? It's totally rising over that rat baffle. See, this is a problem. I'm going to take pictures of this. That shouldn't be happening, but this is because the tank, again, is tilted. And this is not at all common. Like, this is probably not happening to anybody else's tank. I've seen it like 5 times.
Don't
in
say
years.
that anymore.
I know, sorry. But I don't want them to think this is normal.
The waste pipe in the house too.
That's the problem, is that when you try to flush right now, you're probably going to have a hard time. Like when you're doing laundry, you probably have a hard, you might see a burp or two in your toilet if you try to flush it at the same time.
Well, what did you say, Greg?
Because the water's over the level.
backing.
It's basically going back into the house.
The waste
That's
line
what I'm worried about, yeah.
Well, I am too, yeah. It's a problem, it's a problem.
Yeah, check the house.
Well, yeah, actually, that's a good point. It's not going to go on the floor. It's going to try to go to a toilet or a shower or something.
Well, did you see the basement? There's a
No.
pipe coming up.
Does it have a cap on it?
No.
Okay, go turn off the water. Just go turn off the water.
Kathy?
Yeah, turn off the water. Let's make sure it's
No, but
backing up.
I wanted to pull you.
We're gonna go down there
and
and look
show
at
it
that.
to you.
Yeah, let's go down and look at that.
I'm sure it has to have a
Yeah,
cap on it.
we usually go in the basement at some point. We look at everything going on down there too.
No, because it's over.
I don't know why there's a pipe with a cap on it, but we'll figure that out in a minute. So this is not regular, but we'll act like it is. We'll move on. Okay. Okay. So any questions on the septic tank? All right. In the inspection, you get a full map. I measured off to each of these holes. No one's ever going to open this but an inspector. But it's in case you have to do a repair and you ever want to know where it is, or if it's middle of February and you need to dig this up, then it's good to know exactly where it is, and we'll have measurements triangulated off there. I also measured off the distribution box in case you have a problem with the field. Now we know where to get to it. Saves the plumber being here for an hour trying to figure it out. Saves you an extra $150. You know, might as well have it. That's part of the inspection. Sure.
As long as I've had a septic, I've never used bleach
Okay.
in the system. Is that an old wives' tale,
You can
or
use
is that something that?
So you can use everything kind of in moderation, like because it's built for a house. If
Okay.
the bleach hurt it, then we'd have a serious problem, and they should have said
Well,
something
that's
a
what I
long
mean. The
time ago.
bleach hurting
Because everybody's using bleach.
the bacteria and
It will.
whatnot.
So bleach, paint, anything bad that we don't like in there. But it will also, if you're not using it in excess, like running a laundromat or something crazy,
Yep.
then you're just kind of killing off the weak ones.
Okay.
Which is okay, because then they'll replace them with
All
stronger
right.
ones.
That's
So,
good to know.
yeah, they'll just kill off the weak ones. The strong ones will stay, so it's kind of all right.
So
but if you
it-
don't want to keep hitting it with stuff all the time, you don't want to pour paint down there. But every now and then's okay. I do have people that, like I had one system, I think it was my second year doing this. I did an inspection, I looked at everything, I'm like, it's okay. It was like trotting along. She calls me a month later, it's not working, what happened? I'm like, I don't know, let me come look at it. I get there, I go to her basement, piles of laundry everywhere. Like bags. I'm like, what's going on? She goes, oh, I clean houses. I said, that's great. How much laundry are you doing? She goes, I do 12, 15 loads a day. I said, I said, you're over. You're done. You killed it. She said, it's not a laundromat. You killed it. She said, well, you didn't tell me that. I said, I didn't tell you you could open a bakery. I didn't tell you you could do it. We didn't get on the list. So you just can't. You got to treat it like a house. 'Cause it's a
So
house.
that's what I mean. That's something that
So
I was
in a
always-
house, we use bleach every now and then. That's
Yeah,
okay.
that's
But don't
what
go
I mean.
pouring it down the drain. That's terrible.
Just one of those things
Yeah.
that we always
Yeah.
said, don't use bleach down.
No, and like yeast will make them happy every now and then if you want
Right.
to like throw a party for them.
Yep.
Like everybody, like the old timers will be like, I put yeast down my tank all the time.
no.
And that's cool. It's fine. It's like throwing a birthday party for the bugs. It'll make them really psyched. It's like serving up a cake at the party. Everyone's like, wow, cake, let's eat some sugar. Let's play the tail and hockey. We have fun for the afternoon. But as soon as the cake's gone, everybody's going to go back to work.
Yep.
So it's fine if like, I'm going to have a cocktail party. There's going to be 50 people here. I'm going to put some yeast in here the day before so that during the party, everything's really active. And then whenever everyone leaves, they're all going to eat their cake and be done with it. And then we're going to go back to running regular. So it gives them like a little shot, a little boost for that, for a little while, the yeast. Not a bad idea. Ridex is absolutely horrendous. Don't use it. Yeah, it's terrible. What Ridex does is exactly what it says. Makes your septic tank look beautiful. Gets all the solids out of there. Well, guess how they do that? There's not a wizard in there with a wand that goes bing and it disappears. They're sending it all out to the leach field.
What about that Robex root killer?
Root kill is good. I don't use Robex as much. I recommend Zep because it's more natural. It's easier on the bugs.
Because we do that once a year.
Yeah, any root kill that's going to tell you in there that it's okay for the enzymes is going to be fine. I just mainly use root kill because it's what we can get up here, and I carry it in the truck.
Kathy, you stepped
Same
away.
idea, though.
Seth said using bleach occasionally is okay.
Oh, it's fine. Like use everything
Occasionally?
like
Okay.
a regular person. If you start feeling like you have a problem with bleach, and you're like using it on everything every minute of the day, then you might be using too much bleach.
Yeah, I don't ever use it.
But the state also regulates all this stuff to know how they should be designed, and they take into account that people do laundry and use bleach.
Okay.
But they don't take into account that you're opening laundry.
Right.
So that's basically the tank. Now risers. So if you wanted a riser, like on this one, you could put something like that in. It comes corrugated plastic that's ribbed, something like you would put underneath your driveway, right? And I take them and I measure how deep you want it. If you want them an inch down so you don't see it, or if you want it to stick up, or wherever we are, and you cut it to level, you put it in the ground, and then you put a green lid that I buy in bulk. You put that on top, and that's now you have access.
Excuse me.
Hey guys,
If you have a rental, or if you are not liking digging, you might want to put a riser in. If you have a rental, you're just an idiot not to, because if you have a plug in this and it's February and the ground is frozen, I charge about $700-800 when I got to get out the jackhammer and get your thing open. This would take me about an hour and a half. If it was frozen, it'd be murder. Whereas compared to the summer, I can do it in 5 minutes. But because of all the extra work, you'd spend a lot of money, and if you're renting, you'd have to kick the people out the night, refund their money, put them up. It's just a mess for something that's $250 and you never worry about again. Plus your septic pumpers, if you're not renting, if you have a riser, they will be so happy with you. They'll show up quicker and they won't charge you the extra fee for digging it up. I don't know anybody that doesn't charge the fee. I get sent out to dig up stuff for septic guys, and I charge. If I have to come to your house and dig, even if it's down 6 inches, it's at least $70 every time because I drove there. So they work out in the end. It's something you can do yourself.
Does the riser, it seems to me you get the ice freezing cold weather right on top of the tank with the riser. Does that make
Well,
sense?
it has a lid and it is insulated. It has a gasket on it, and the walls are double insulated or double thick.
On the riser?
Yep, I use double corrugated pipe that you
Mine
put
is
in there.
put in it.
Right, well, depends on what they did. I don't use the cheap stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
we
you don't know about
why
it though either.
then.
I'm not saying anything bad about what you did. It's just, if you use the polylock stuff or the stuff you get from Home Depot, it's like this plastic stuff, and they contort, they're just junk, personally. But I mean, I do everything the commercial way, so it's strong. I mean, I put in the metal met ones that say sewer on it, I can put those in. I've done many of those. I mean, yeah. I just don't like to do the cheaper stuff because I don't want somebody coming back at me and saying, hey, it's out of contort, it doesn't fit, the lid doesn't fit right, it's been 4 years. I don't want to deal with it. So I just do the right stuff right off.
I need your card.
Yes, I can.
So would we need 2 risers here?
No, you don't need one on this end. If you had a filter,
Just one.
If you had a filter, by law, you'd have to have a riser on this end.
Okay.
You never have to have one here. Now, starting about 6 years ago, they said if the tank is deeper than 12 inches, it has to have a riser to grade. And that was for the pumpers. And it was because the homeowner is getting charged to dig it up every time, and it just makes everybody happy if the thing's on there. If you tell your pump company that you have a riser, they'll show up quicker because they know they're not dicking around. Because a lot of times when you show up at a house and someone says, "Oh, the tank's off the corner," I've heard that so many times, and you go off the corner and you poke around, and it's not off the corner; it's over here. So they don't want to deal with it. If the truck isn't pumping or moving, they're losing money.
I've always dug it up, but I think it's time to get a riser.
Right, well, if you want a riser, we can throw one in. But that way you never worry about it again. You never have to dig it up. And if you have a problem in the winter, it's easily fixable.
Yeah.
The winter problem is really the skiers. Because no one wants to use the bathroom at the lodge. So they really hit it hard in the morning. And who does, you know? And then they hit it hard when they get back because everybody's getting home at the same time. Everybody's got to take a dump. Everyone wants to eat, because everyone wants to take showers. They've been in their clothes all day skiing. And you get this thing, what's called a toilet. Yours won't do it. But you get a dam that you get so much toilet paper between these two, it forms a bridge, and it just needs to be knocked out, and all the water will come out, and you're fine. But if you don't have a riser, and it's February, that little thing's gonna cost you $800. If you got a riser, you just knock it down, and you're fixed. So that's the advantage of having a riser. If you had a filter, it would have to have a riser. If anything's deeper than 12 inches nowadays, it has to have a riser for access.
And why don't we have a filter? Why?
Well, you didn't want one, I guess.
It should have.
No, it's up to you. So filters are a funny one. I could care less about either way, but I've heard all the arguments. Because again, when we go to these conferences, we all talk about stuff because there's nothing else to do in there, and that's all we have in common is poop. So we talk about this stuff. We talk about Red X. Pretty much everyone hates Red X. But the filters are a funny one because half the guys love them, half the guys hate them. Because if you don't take care of them, they can be a problem. Because they'll gum up and they'll cause problems in the house. If you take care of it and you're smart, which is why you have to have a riser, why they're by law supposed to be on there. There's a lot of times I go to houses with people having problems, and I was hoping that was your problem, was that nobody ever dug this up because no one knew there was a filter, and I was going to get here and just pull the filter out and whoosh, everything would be fixed. But that happens to me a lot. People just don't know. Once they do, obviously, then they know about it once I leave. But so you don't have to have a filter. Some guys like them because they will catch more particles, but some guys don't like them because they restrict flow. So I've heard both on that way, and I can see both points.
You recommend them or not?
I don't know, I can see both points. I don't really know what to tell you. I'm on the fence. I don't mind if they're there, and I don't mind if they're not. It's okay. one less thing I have to touch that's really gross though.
Yeah.
So it's nice that they're not there, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that's the tank. Any questions down here? Okay, moving on.
What's the function of the distance between the tank and?
To get the water over there.
Huh?
To get the water over there.
Well, why so? Why?
Oh, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have
They
to
could have started it right here.
Okay.
Gone right there.
Okay.
This is more of where design, you know. They don't want to be too close to foundation because you also got to remember, once we have the field built, you want edges for water to get out the sides. Because when it starts and it's brand new, the bottom of the bed is virgin. But that's the first area that starts to get caked up. Then the water goes out to the sides. You've got to have sides. Like I went to one that I had to fail a couple weeks ago because they put the tank right against the house and they put the system right against the house and right along the tank. And I was like, you lost two sides of this field. And it was failing. And he's like, well, it's only 10 years old. I said, well, this is your problem. He's like, well, there's plenty of room. I'm like, there's not. You didn't give runoff. He built it like the plan, but didn't give any room for anything to run out the side. And not only that, but he built a wall against it. So it had nowhere to go. There's no air even.
Yeah.
So on this one, we have a small sag over here, on the way over here. It's not big enough for me to be like, oh my God, this needs to be fixed. It's just a small sag where the water pooled for a second in my camera. I can still see the water line up here on the lens.
Kind of goes up
So it's
a
not
little bit.
filling it, it's not causing a P-trap. It's just settled a little bit. And that's probably part of what's making a little bit come back, but the bigger problem is the tilt. You don't want to talk about that anymore, so we're not going to talk about that. So, we're coming over here. Now we got your distribution box. Let's take a look at that real quick, actually. Okay, so the good news is while we're running all that water, and now that we stopped running it, the D box is empty. So we're giving it water, it's going away in the field, and it's not having trouble. We ran it for a little while there. We didn't do the full 20 minutes because we're afraid of it going back in the house. But that shows me that the field is accepting. And then we have some other stuff I see over here that the field is looking okay. So we have a small sag there, but it's not enough from like you need to dig this up. If it was more, bigger, you would dig up a section and you'd kind of prop it up, put some stuff under there, and just get it back to level. That's all you really need to do. And again, we're just moving water. There's no moving parts.
That just happens naturally through settling. and
Somebody maybe
stuff
drove
like
over
that.
this at some point or it settled. You know, the tank's a little wonky. Maybe the installer wasn't A1. I don't know. I can just tell you what it is.
freezing in the winter at the sag plant?
Well, it could. There's a possibility of it, but it's deep enough where it shouldn't.
Oh, these are deeper?
They're deep enough, yeah. They're well over a foot. And see, the thing up here, if we have a winter, which we just don't get, like a lot of times I'll see a tank, because this is good to go over. So I'm used to just going over what's here, but we're trying to cover everything. So sometimes I'll see a tank it should be 12 inches deep for insulation, so it doesn't freeze in the winter. Now it's hard to freeze a tank. The state makes you do all this, and they make me explain if it's less than 12 inches deep, I have to give you the whole riot act on it. So if there's less than 12 inches deep, the worry is, will the tank freeze? Now it could, but it's really hard. You'd have to have the perfect storm. You would have to have pumped the thing out in the fall, got all the biological material out of there, and then didn't use the bathroom again, just didn't use the house, right? Kind of like a honey-do list. I mean, we're leaving the house, we're closing it up for the winter. Let's pump the tank, bad idea. Leave something in there for the winter so the bugs are generating heat, right? So you pump it out, you get it all cleaned. Now you have to have a slow leak in the house. And I don't mean a leak that's going on the floor, I mean a leak that's going down the pipe and entering the tank. Now that slow leak has to fill the tank up, which in this case is 1,250 gallons. That's gonna take a while. Let's say this leak's big enough that it fills the tank up with clean water. A little bit of dirt in there because they didn't get all of it when they clean it, but not enough to keep it warm. The tank's like sitting on the surface, so it's exposed. Now you have to so now we got clean water. Now we might freeze, right? But now it has to get really cold out. So we have to have one of these winters, which you don't really get, where it's super cold and there's zero snow. Because the minute you get 6 inches of snow, it's insulated. And that's going back to this pipe. The minute we get snow, you're insulated.
I remember the winter we had no snow.
Right,
It was in the 80s. The ski areas didn't even open.
right. And well, I've been up to Bretton Woods and had to jet their lines before. Because they had problems with them freezing. And they've got a hell of a system up there. But most of the times the snow fixes. So when I start to do this spiel about a shallow tank and tell them, you have to care about freezing, people look at me like I get two heads. Like, why are you telling me this? It's been in there 20 years. I'm like, I know. It's probably fine because it snows on the thing and then you're good. But I have to have the conversation. In this case, we don't need to have a conversation, but we're having it because we're learning stuff. So, the pipe's coming on over here to the distribution box, which is right under here. You can actually hear it coming out of the tank right there. So, that's the distribution box, and it does just that. It distributes. According to the plan, I believe we have 3 or 4 lines on this one. It's a little hard because they laid the one on top of the other one. I'll look at what you have over there on the paper. It might be a little more clear. But, because they did a replacement here, I believe, right? They put it in the same spot.
I think they did.
And they dug up the tank and put 1250.
The tanks were replaced.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I think they added another line,
Could be why it's on top.
to the leach field.
They added a line to it rather than putting a new one.
Well, what's the difference? I mean,
I don't know.
It's weird. It's like saying I need tires for a truck, but just buying one. It's really only as good as the weakest tire. Usually they don't. Not often that they add to them. I guess what I'm saying.
Illegal, isn't it?
Not really. No, but people do still. I've seen all kinds of stuff that's not legal.
Not professionals.
No. Well, yeah, no. They should.
I just don't know what you mean when you say add to it. Instead of having 3 lines, they have.
There's either 3 or
one
4.
on
I gotta
top of
look
the
at the
other.
plan, but you have 2 plans there. One's imposed over the other one. You have a replacement here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they took the old plan and put the new plan on top of it. So when I'm looking at your plan, the pictures you sent me again, I'm going to look at that. It's got doubles. You can see the old tank, and you see this new one like imposed over it.
Right,
see.
right.
And so when I got to this part, usually I can count the lines, but they're imposing one over the other, so it's a bit weird.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? But I'll look at it closer at home when I can blow it up. So it was either 3 or 4 lines out of here. I got in here, and you have restrictors in here, which keep the flow even going out to each pipe. So we're distributing. We want 100% of our water to come in. Let's say there's 4 lines leaving here. We want it to go out 25% to each line, evenly. And that's the job of the box. If this was a hill, like heading downhill, you'd put the box at the top, distributing evenly. Even though it's going downhill, you still give each one 25%. If that wasn't there, it would all just go down the bottom pipe. It wouldn't work. So that's the distributed box is distributed. That's it. In this case, we have presbys that are heading out this way. And then we have a vent down there at the end. I've got my other camera in there. So, let's talk about presbys. And then we'll talk about other things.
I have a question
Sure, what
on
you
the
got?
distribution box. How do you know there's nothing wrong with it?
How do I know there's nothing wrong with it? I could see
You
it.
don't have to dig it up, or?
No, I don't like
No?
to disturb these.
Okay.
Because once these are in, you don't want to mess with them because things settle. And if you don't get these put back on there right, and this is another thing everybody talks about, but I think everyone pretty much leans to don't touch it. Unless there's a problem, then you dig it up and you go in there and you see what's going on, like roots. Otherwise, it's kind of a sealed thing that they sealed up before they buried, and you don't really want to unseal it. Because you don't really want to let the genie out of the bottle sometimes on these. So, if everything looks okay, you leave it alone, and yours looks fine. And it dried out after we stopped using the water, meaning that the water's coming in and going out just fine. Everything's being distributed okay. Even if they're off a little bit, you'll say it's tilted a little bit to the left. This line's going to get a little more water than, say, the guy over all the way on the right, but eventually he's going to stop working earlier, so he's just going to back up a little quicker, and it will go over there, and you'll use it eventually. As long as they're not off by anything catastrophic, it's still fine. And then obviously you don't want to drive on. So, what we have here, I actually have a piece of one of these in the truck. I'll grab it.
Bring some cards.
Cards.
Yeah.
Like mine.
Okay.
his.
That's Lucy. She just hangs out. Yes, she does this all the time. She's like, I wish she could find tanks. That'd be great. So, this.
Well, she has a nose for it. You just need training.
She likes to roll around with dirt. Okay, so down here, this one's deep. We almost didn't reach it. It's way down here. This is the top of it, and this is what was in there. Okay, see that? Little hole in it. It's pretty dry. And what I did is I dug down here next to it. Can't see that well, but I wanted to get down around the pipe and see how it's what stage it's at. It's pretty dry right now, which is good. The field's doing really well. So he's sitting there. We have a diaper here. That's on the bottom, and all the water is these are 8-foot sections going all the way down to there from there. What we're doing is we're sending the water down here, and these little holes, the water's seeping out. At this point, we've gotten rid of most of the chunks. There's no toilet paper. There's nothing like that in here.
Why would it be dry though, Seth? I would think it'd be wet.
Well, I mean, at the bottom got wet. Like it let the water out of the hole, like we want.
Just okay.
But it's not full of water.
Okay.
Because when I come down to these, what I do is I poke on the top and then I go down the sides.
Yeah.
And at some point, when you see water weeping out, you know whereabouts you are.
Okay.
And that tells me where it's running. And you're down here. Okay. The other good thing we had about here is I separate dirt. We had topsoil, and then as we go down, that's more of your Presby sand. See how it's the grit's taller? So that's certain sand you have to pack around these things. I'm looking for biomat around the sides and bottom of the pipe, and it goes gray, and then it'll get like dark black in the end, really. And the more of it I see, that tells me that it's getting clayed up and it's starting to fail.
Right.
I mean, they start dying the minute you start using it. But they last 20 to 25 years
Yeah.
until you send enough stuff down there where it turns into clay and kills them.
So how
I've
do you
seen-
know when this is dying?
Well, the first thing we looked for, I'm going to show you a couple pictures here in a minute, is like I did one yesterday. I'm going to show you a picture from that one, which was completely shot. and it had so much biomat it was almost black. And I have some pictures of it sitting on the corner of the mat. I'm going to show you some pictures. But so I start to see that, we start saying there's a problem. But the other thing, like the one I did yesterday, once I got down to the pipe, I was just above it, and all of a sudden, because we were running water, all the effluent started coming into my hole and filling it up. So I immediately jabbed down and got a couple good shovelfuls of the biomat before it was out of my reach. But as the hole filled up, and then I'm like, well, that's it. If we got water above the pipes, then it's obviously not going below the pipes. It's not leaving. So we have a problem. So that one was a fail. This one's running along just fine. Now there's a few things I'm looking for. Let me get my flashlight, then we can see in there a little better.
Yeah.
So this one's pretty deep. It's about as deep as I can get. You see the pipe? That's the tube. Black.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then I went down here to the right, and we have no effluent present, and I would have been okay seeing some down there in the bottom, because that would have been the bottom of the pipe, and that's what we're expecting. But because there's none, that's just a better thing for you. It means that it went away really quick.
Yep.
Meaning that our sand here is percolating very well. It's taking water, it's going right away. As they get older, they'll slowly go slower and slower. Basically what happens is we're going to throw out some round numbers here. Say when it was built, these aren't real numbers. So when the thing was built, say it can take 1,000 gallons a day. Like that's what it can percolate out. Say you're living here and you've got people in all the bedrooms, you got some kids here, and you use 800 gallons a day. So you're not going to see a problem because it can take 1,000, you give 800, right? Let's fast forward 5-6 years. Now you're 900 gallons a day is what it can handle because it's slowly got some particles out here that slowed it down. Still not seeing a problem. You're at 800. Then all of a sudden you get to 800 and you kind of meet. And you're like, oh well, we heard the toilets were a little weird. That was odd. And then you have a couple come over for the weekend. And now the couple's here. So now all of a sudden you're up to 1,000, but it can only take 800. So now all of a sudden maybe they get here Friday, right? You're not going to notice anything Friday or even Saturday really during the day because you have this extra storage room. You can fill these pipes up because at this point they're not running as well as now. They're actually having trouble getting out. So the pipes have all this room to start filling up with water while your guests are here. Even though it can't get out of there right away, it can hold it. It's storage. And the tank should have more storage, but yours will do. But that'll give you your storage, right? So then you get to the point where they got here Friday, say Saturday night, Sunday morning, someone's using the lowest bathroom and hey, it burped on me, made a weird noise. I'm like, oh, that's odd. Huh. And then they leave that afternoon. Well, they left, and now all of a sudden you're back to 800. You had the storage, and now it's slowly seeping away and catching up. And now you don't notice the problem anymore. So you're looking at each other and saying, well, I don't know what it was. It's not doing it anymore. I guess the problem's fixed. Well, that was your hint, because you were at your amount that you're using, and it just couldn't take any more. And then, but all of a sudden you went over it for a weekend. It didn't show up the first day or two, because it's not right off the problem. It's the problem when the storage is overfull. Okay? So, and then consequently, say you're at 800, and it can only take 800, but then 2 kids leave and go off to college, start their life. Now you're only at 600. Now you're running again for a while. Yeah. So it really just gets to the point where you don't like the amount it takes because you want it to take more, and that's when you got to either kick people out of the house or build another system. That's basically it. They slide very slowly into failure. It's not something that happens in a week. Like with the short terms, people like want to blame it on somebody, and you can't because it could have been 6 months ago somebody did something wrong, and it could just be a combination of everything. So there's no way to really pinpoint it. And the midlife is very long, so it's hard to like. So when someone says like, how much life have I used? And it's like, well, it's hard to tell. I mean, I know this one's doing quite well. I'd say it's lower than 50%. It's looking pretty good, but it's a big area. But when they start to fail, it's easy to see what's going on.
Mine has failed to flush a couple times.
What's that?
Mine has failed to flush sometimes.
See, that might be that you're having a
Well,
problem.
I did the plumbing, so that has another.
No, wait a minute.
Well, there we go.
This is an option too.
Yeah, it is an option. But that's the thing. Like people will call me saying, a lot of times it's the washer because it's trying to dump the whole rinse cycle in there, and that's a lot. And they'll be, oh, it's not working well. Well, the first thing I do is you got to just eliminate. You start at the tank, see is there a clog, is there a filter that's not cleaned, is there a problem going on there, is there a clog, and if that's okay, you get down the line and check this, and then you come out here and dig a hole, and then you just kind of follow the line.
If this system, which is fairly new, and you found this failed,
Yeah.
by law, can that be replaced? Just this, not the whole thing.
Yes, even now, it doesn't have to be new. Like if this fails, when this fails, if you can keep the tank, you get someone like me to come down and certify it and say that yes, this tank is okay, it's reusable, and you just need someone with a stamp. And then you reuse the tank, and then you just replace this field. The last time they did this one, they took out a 1,000-gallon tank and put in a 1250 because you upgraded, I guess, which was kind of odd because you didn't need to. A 1,000-gallon tank would have done a 3-bedroom house just fine. It's still in their code.
Really?
But
Yeah,
you
we
made something
chose
stronger.
to.
You might have chose to get something stronger.
Would this take a 4-bedroom?
Yes,
It would?
but this won't.
Huh?
But this won't.
It won't?
It's not built for it. It's built for 3. So I had this problem the other day. Maine's Wild West, so they don't care about the size of the tank. So I had this one where a guy had a cottage down by the water, and he was looking to buy the property, and the plan I was given was for a 2-bedroom cottage, and that's what was built. Somebody came along and built a 4-bedroom house next to it on the same piece of property and just attached it. And the guy, so the person living there is an old lady, and I'm there, and they're like, well, it's working fine. I'm like, yeah, because it's one old lady and she hasn't used the cottage in 6 years. The guy buying it, it's 1.9 million. He wants to rent it. It's on the lake. He's like, I'm renting the cottage too. And I'm like, well, then this isn't going to work. And he's like, why? I'm like, because you've got a 2-bedroom leach field. The tank was fine by Maine standards, and the pump station was fine by Maine standards, but the field was set up for 4 people, 2 people per bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and he wants to put 12.
Sure.
Now, it's not uncommon for me to go to these inspections and find that there's an extra bedroom added, because people kind of snake that stuff in there.
Right.
And that I can be like, okay, you're kind of pushing it, but as long as there's not 2 people in every bedroom. Like I put in an apartment above my garage last year, but 2 of the kids went off to college, so I really kind of just traded. Technically, if there's 2 people in all of my bedrooms, I'd be overdoing it, but because I know there's nobody else living upstairs at this point, I'm not going to let anybody else live upstairs. I'm fine with it. But at resale, I'll have to do something about it, but that's a long ways away. So it's a field. It has to be set up too. Just because your tank is big enough, and the other guy, the other one wasn't getting it. He's like, but the tank's big enough. I'm like, I know, but the field isn't. And just won't. I kept trying to say it's like a 4-ounce glass, and you're trying to put 10 ounces in it. It just won't freaking fit. It's fitting 4 ounces because there's one old lady putting 2 ounces in it.
Yeah.
But there's different usage.
Are you concerned about the trees and the roots?
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah,
them.
that was.
So that's
be
something
one
else.
of my
We've got a couple things
questions.
still to talk about. We have a lot of surface roots here. That's why I had to get out the bar there. I was having trouble getting through your top here. Now there's none down in here because these are more surface, so that's not a problem. One thing you can do is use root kill once or twice a year. Dump it right in the tank.
Really?
Yep, and that will take care of any roots trying to get in. This one's not too much of a problem because it's so deep. If this was, normally these are down about 12 inches, the top of them. So this one's pretty deep. If it was down where they usually are, the top would have been about right here, and I would have said to start using root kill because these would kind of go for it because they're so close. But this is so far away, they really don't even know what's going on down there. So
Will
they're not really
will
going
that
for it.
correct a system? Because I had trees, a big tree right next to mine.
Yeah, it can.
It will,
The roots will get in there because I mean it's everything they want. It's a hydroponic system, especially in the
will
winter.
the root kill eventually?
Root kill will kill it. What root kill does is it's like a phosphorus. You put it in the water, it's crystals, and they have to dissolve, so it's the easiest to put it in the tank. And then as they come out here, as the root says, hey, water, I'm going to go drink that, and it tries to come off the tree and go to get the water, if it touches the water, it gets burned. So the root kill won't come out of the water and grab them, but if they try to go into the water, it'll burn them.
Will it do anything? I mean, will it take care of what was in there when?
Oh yeah, it'll burn them away. And it goes pretty good up to about a ½ inch. After that, it just kind of strips off the bark and kind of just, it kills it, but it doesn't remove it.
Phosphorus is a big problem with the lake water.
Yeah, well,
Wondering,
We
you know,
don't want phosphorus.
right.
yeah,
I mean, this isn't going to make it to the
not
lake.
here. No.
Yeah.
But if you were
But that's
closer to the
also,
wa- yeah.
one thing of root kill isn't going to raise the lake levels, but I mean, there's something going on out there that's obviously much more major.
Right.
But yeah, that's the main ingredient in it. That
I
burns
thought
the
the
roots.
root killer was for the tanks. It's important for these
Well,
as well.
see, if you have roots in your tanks, then yeah, it's wherever the roots are. In this case, there's nothing in this tank.
Right.
There's some above here.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
but either way, you always add it to the tank. You can't get it in here.
I never
Well,
had
we
any
put
in
it
the
to the
tank.
toilet.
I don't know.
Well, you can put it to the toilet, but how do you put it to the toilet? Do you dump the whole thing in there?
No, it says take 3
Exactly.
shots, flush, flush.
All at the same day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then don't use
I
it
don't
And then don't
recommend
use it for.
but that's fine.
hours.
Yeah.
If it's
we
working, that's fine. The reason we don't recommend it is because not in everybody's plumbing. If your plumbing is done correctly, you can do exactly what you did. Put it in there, flush. Put it in there, flush. But usually what I recommend and what we all recommend, because a lot of the houses aren't newer and the plumbing isn't as good, is we recommend putting in a cup or so, like doing it in 4 doses, and doing it like once a week. Because if you do have old pipes that are joined and they're not smooth, the crystals will build up. And you need the week for the
yeah.
water to wash
Our-
by
yeah,
and
our
make them
system-
dissolve
ours
before you
is
add
on
more,
Yeah.
so you don't create a
Our
clog.
system's like 4 years
And
old.
because I don't know what people have in their house, I always recommend to add it slowly.
Got it.
But if you can do it that way, then hell, that's a lot easier.
So with a
But
riser,
I don't
you
tell
can
people
just
to do it.
lift the top
If
and
you have a riser,
pour
yeah,
it
just
in.
pop it up.
Okay.
Or if you have your
Fine.
guys pumping every 2 years, you tell
Yeah.
them, you just leave the bottle out there next to it when they're ready to pump. And they'll get the picture. They go, oh, I'm supposed to put this in when I'm done. Or you tell them, hey, put the root kill in when you're
Root kill
done.
is
Not
in there,
before,
huh?
because that's not going to do
Okay.
any good. But then once you're done pumping.
And you say twice a year?
I'd say once or twice it's 10, 15 bucks. For the
Yeah, no, I
preventative,
know.
yeah.
No, I know. It's just.
This one I'd say once a year. Twice a year is when you have a problem. If you feel like you got trees around your stuff, then do it twice.
Okay.
You know? But if you
Bring it
feel like
home.
you're out in an open area, there's no trees around, maybe do it
Well,
once for the
that's
hell of it.
not.
Yeah.
But if you have trees around you, then
Oh
definitely
yeah, we definitely do.
then hit
Okay.
it. Because it's a cheap, easy thing. And,
It is
it's a
cheap
lot
and
better than
easy,
repairing
yeah.
these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting in new ones because they cost money.
Would it be beneficial to remove some of these trees?
Well, I don't know. Visually it would suck.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
would
just,
just put the root
personally, I
kill
like
in.
trees. So
Yeah,
I'd put root kill
Do
in.
the root kill.
I'd put the root kill in.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
mean,
I
if that
Did you
solves
say
your
Zep?
issue,
Zap.
just do it.
Zap. Root kill. Now, I've seen tanks that were right next to, trees that were right next to a tank, and I've seen all the roots going right to the tank, and that's a problem. Now, if that was happening here and just right next to it, you're just constantly going to be battling the thing. Maybe you'd want to take that one down. But this, the aesthetically pleasing, and it's really not getting in that bad. Yeah, just add this stuff and it'll be routine and take care of it. Now, let's talk about some other systems that we could find. Usually I just talk about what you have. I put myself in your shoes, usually the buyer. I know how a house has been used. I know how you're going to use it. And then we talk about stuff. Like if you say I'm going to short term it and you said I was only using it vacation and it's kind of hurting a little, I might give you some advice. Be like, all right, we should put a vent if it doesn't have one. And maybe we should in the beginning just rent weekends. Let's take a break during the week, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, you live here and everything's going fine. So other systems we have. So most every system you cannot drive on because you'll collapse them and it'll hurt them. The deeper they are, the more weight you can put on them. This one you could kind of drive on because it's so deep, you're dissipating the weight out pretty good. The only system you can drive on is concrete chambers. Those are the kinds where you're in like Idlewild or like the Linderhof area where everyone's tight. The lots are all so small.
have one.
Right.
Right
So
next door.
Yes. Then you put them in like the driveway
In
when
the
there's nowhere
driveway.
else to go.
It's where it had to be.
Exactly, and that's
That's
why they
the
use. They
problem.
cost a little more,
Yep.
but you can do whatever you want on them.
Yep.
The example I usually give, because I'm usually up near Conway, the entire Burger King parking lot before there was septic is all concrete chambers. You can park dump trucks on it all day. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's another style. We have the Presbys here we saw. Stone and pipe is what everybody loves. Stone and pipe can rejuvenate because you basically go from the box and you have this bed of stone, and because it's a whole bed, these guys are in their lane. Right? They're in their tube, and they can't really go to another tube because you got sand between everything, right? So if you lose, say you're halfway up the pipe and you lose number 2, for some reason, they got crushed or they got roots in it, right? You've lost the other part of this pipe. Now, and everybody else will stay in their lane and do their thing. If this was stone and pipe and you lost number 2 right here, these guys, the 1 and 3, will just keep seeping over and use this stuff. So they're more durable that way. The other cool thing about stone and pipe, they're durable and they can rejuvenate. So picture it like a salad bar. You got people, you're feeding them every day. And you're living here every day, and they're used to getting the food, and they're used to regulating how many of us need to be here to take care of this food, right? So all of a sudden you go on vacation. Well, all they know is that you've been feeding them, carrots and broccoli and stuff, and they're like, I don't like broccoli. We're going to put that on the side. I don't want to eat that. So they put it to the side. I don't like some of these carrots. We put those aside because there's fresh food every day. You leave. You go on vacation. Well, the bugs are like, well, what's going on? There's no food. No one's feeding us. So they're like, well, let's go eat the broccoli we didn't like, and let's go over here and eat the carrots we didn't like. Now, what they'll do in that instance, if you have stone and pipe, because it's one big field, say that corner over there, or this corner, wherever, some area has gotten blocked up in the rock, because the rock isn't the filter. They're the quarter-inch stones sitting on top of each other. They will go through like an ant farm, and maybe they'll eat a channel and all of a sudden open up a whole corner that hasn't seen any water in a while. So they'll kind of rejuvenate. Now, I'm not saying they'll bring it back to 100% and you need to leave the thing alone every now and then. It's just a kind of a nice thing about stone and pipe. The problem with stone and pipe is that you can't put them on a hill at all, or it all flows to one side. And you can't, they're bigger. They take up more room. But everybody that can take them, if you've got the room, you do it.
Is that the only, because this seems to be the system that they're all talking
Oh,
about.
of course it is, because it's cheap and easy.
So,
Is there like also like dating in terms of when your system went in as to what type you have for leaching fields?
No, it really comes down to the designer.
Okay.
What he's
so they
designing,
could have
where
put one
he's
in
trying to
30
fit it.
years ago.
Well,
and
there's some items that weren't around, like Presby's weren't around. Well, they're around there. But yeah, I mean, if you go back 30, 40 years, there was no Presby's put in. It was pretty much stone and pipe. And
78, I did mine.
Yeah.
But not long after that, this became optional.
Yeah.
now, with the concrete that I have,
Yep.
the chambers, that was 35 years ago.
Yep.
They put it in.
It's all about the. So what happens with every system, right? Let's hit that. So every system ends in sand, whether it's Presby's, concrete chambers, stone and pipe. They all end in a sand bed. And what goes wrong with these things, unless it's a pipe that got crushed or something like that, what mainly goes wrong when they run their course is the sand is turned to clay, because pieces have made it past there, and because of that we've made a bowl and now it's holding water. So they slowly turn it to clay, and that's all going to depend on how you use it. Will depend on how long you get out of it, really. But if there was nothing, if you could get at the sand and scoop it out, put new sand under it, it'd be really cheap and it'd be easy. But nobody can do that.
Exactly.
Right. So you have to
So-
tear the whole thing out.
Knock on wood, so far, I know,
Yeah.
I pump it every 2
Is it just
every-
you?
No, there's sometimes there's 8 of us.
Oh, okay.
You never know
Right.
whether the family's going to be here or not.
It's all about usage. You know, I mean,
And then we don't use it in the wintertime.
just getting a big break in the winter. Is it stone,
Exactly.
it's concrete chambers. So.
Exactly.
Concrete chambers is your next one up because that's pretty old too. and it's not using any of the plastic where it's keeping everything in. It is kind of like a stone and pipe, it just doesn't have any air. They're hard to inspect because you can't just dig the hole where I want.
Yep.
You have to find an edge.
Yep.
Or there should be a vent on it.
There isn't.
Okay. Well, it could have fallen off, or they could have maybe not put one on.
They didn't put one
Nowadays,
on.
you have to have one on. That's the easiest way to inspect a concrete chamber, because you have to get right on the edge, or it's impossible, because they're just flat on top.
Is that what, when you see the pipes come up and,
Like that one, yeah. Yep. I took it out of the ground because it was plugged. I had to reach in there and get dirt in there.
Really?
I couldn't get my camera through, so I pulled it out of the ground and got it out. In
That's,
fact, we can see. Well, it's not really doing much good. On the other end of the camera, so that end of your field where I'm in, I'm looking at that, but I'm looking at like the whole tube of it. It looks like I'm looking at some sort of like Star Wars thing.
Okay.
And it's dry. There's nothing in it, and it hasn't seen anything. So the system is doing very well.
Oh, it's good.
It hasn't made it to the end even, and there's multiple ends. So what's happened here is because there's probably just the two of you. Picture it like opening the door to your garage and standing outside and having a 5-gallon bucket. You're throwing it in there. You're throwing it from there, and because you're not using a lot of water, you're not really seeping to the other end of the garage.
Yeah.
Now maybe if you had 8 people here, there'd be 4 of you throwing buckets, and maybe a little of it would reach there.
Well, rarely there could be 6 or 8 people here.
Yes.
But anyway.
Yeah.
I thought someone said at one point that these pipes are relatively useless. The ones, you know, no?
If
They
I
do
bury you in
vent-
the
they do
ground
vent-
and I don't give you air,
Yeah.
how happy are you? Not that you're very happy that you're buried in the ground, but you're happier if I give you air.
Okay,
Yeah. And the bugs are alive,
okay,
and they're more productive
okay.
if you give them air. So Presby had this whole thing when they first came out, how they were smaller than everybody. We don't take up any space. We don't need a vent. Put them in front of your house. You'll never know it's there. And then they realized slowly, after they came out in the real world and we're putting them in, not in the lab, that, oh, they need a vent. Oh, they're a little bigger. They're still small, but they're a little bigger. They just came out with a new product too. They basically took this and squished it. They're called fins. But all they did was take the circle and turn it into a long oval. They're harder to find, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, that's about it. Any questions? What can I help you with? What do we got?
great information.
Yes, very good.
But I still need a card.
Stuff, this is
yeah, just me too.
Good. This is what I do. And it's funny because no one tells you how to do this because there aren't many people doing it. So I learned from the old guy, and he didn't use. All he used was a shovel and this and a rake. He wrote the report by hand. He wrote the map by hand. He mailed it to you in the mail. Like
Yeah.
nobody likes that nowadays. They want the report that night. They want it digital, done.
That's right.
So I learned a lot of the old stuff and the old way to do it, which was really handy. But everybody now that I go to, because I'm in 2 states, and I have people that call me and want me to drive like 4 hours, and they're like, "We want you." And I've had a library ask me if I'd go teach the kids. They're like, "We just love what you do." I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I know what I'm doing, but I didn't learn from somebody else that was doing this. I just feel like this is the way it should be done.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, because other guys, a lot of them will come and do the job, and they really don't talk to you, and they'll just be like, "Here's a sheet, and you got 2 bad baffles," and you don't know what a baffle is. You don't know really what's going on,
Right.
and they left, and you paid them. And that's how a lot of it's done.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's because you get bigger companies and they're hiring kids that might not even know how to do the job correctly. That's my problem. I'm busy and I'm afraid to hire someone because they need my eyes and my brain to know what's going on.
Sure.
One little thing I see in there, like a rust line, I'm like, that changes everything about how I'm reading this.
Yeah.
And to teach it to a kid, to teach it to myself took years of doing it over and over, and you get better the more you do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
been
love
very
it. I
good.
think it's fun, and I think you should walk out of here
Could
with an
he-
education for
apprentice.
$350. I mean, for
Rather
Christ's
than-
sake.
They sell this house.
I go home and do a report for another hour, but I mean, I make good money. You should be getting your money's worth out of it.
Yeah.